I'm in one of our backyard caterpillar tunnels, and I'm just going around the farm and taking a look at the status of our overwintered crops, and I'm happy to say that this has been the best year of overwintering crops we've ever had on the farm in my entire career. Now, our farm is small, right? So, keep that in mind. But as a percentage of beds in production for our farm, it's pretty amazing to have this much production this early in the season from crops that were planted anywhere from August to October of last year, so 2017. Now, I'm going to go and show you today the 3 crops that we've got that are just incredibly prolific. And one of them is no surprise, spinach. Been doing this one for a long time, but the other 2, I'm pleasantly surprised to see the kind of production we're getting from these beds. So let's go check it out. So in these 2 greenhouses here, I've got a total of 4 or 5 beds in production. There's 4 in this one, and then there's 1 in the other, and we just flipped 3 of the other beds in there to replant them. But you're familiar with spinach. I've done videos on spinach in the past, and spinach is, bar none, the best overwintered salad green you can grow in a cold climate. There is nothing that I've ever seen in my 9 years of farming that exceeds it as far as weight, like pound per foot, and just overall consistency. We're getting a solid pound a foot off these beds, so 50 pounds per bed. These are 50-foot beds, or just under. And the regrowth is in like 10 days. So with overwintered spinach, you're getting huge yields and consistently. First and second cuts are going to be the best as far as quality is concerned. And then from there on, you're going to get more of a savoid shaped leaf. So this bed here in particular is a nice spoon-shaped leaf. I'm looking at this going, that's an easy 50 pounds. We'll harvest that with the quick cut greens harvester, and bang, 10 days later, back for a second cut. All of this spinach on this particular plot was done with the paper pot transplanter. Now, the other cool thing mentioning about this spinach in particular, something different that we've done in the past, is that, like I said, this is all done with the paper pot transplanter at this plot. And the cool thing about that is we were able to push our planting date way later than we normally do. Like, usually, especially over the last few winters, like, our winters have been getting progressively colder with more snow, and this winter was no exception. We had a long winter, lots of snow, pretty damn cold, and in those conditions, I usually got to have my overwintered spinach in either a caterpillar tunnel or a poly low tunnel by the first week of October. And these were planted between the 3rd and 4th the 2nd and 3rd week of October. So that's a week to 2 weeks later than we normally do it. And the yield is, I want to say just as good, but the more I look at it, comparing it to some of the direct seeded beds, it looks better, and we can do a comparison. So that paper pot transplanter overwintered spinach was an awesome winner. Main reason being is that I can keep any summer crop that's in this bed previously going right to the edge, like pushing it to its end. It might have been a crop that would say planted in maybe early August, and then I pushed it till mid-October, turned it, and then planted with the paper pot crop. And I normally wouldn't be able to do that if I was direct seeding. If I had direct seeded this, I wouldn't have had the same amount of success. So this paper pot transplanter is really giving us a big edge at the beginning and the end being that you can push your summer crops further and then get a transplanted crop in. So real big winner on the spinach this year. As I look at these beds, the other obvious thing I see is that the paper pot crop beds have no weeds in them. So another huge advantage there. Another reason for me to start thinking about perhaps these other two, the arugula and the red Russian, we could do the same thing with overwintering. We could push their planting date a little bit further into late summer, early fall, and get better results, because the direct seeded ones, the red Russian and the arugula, have a tendency to have more weeds in them, and you'll even see it from the spinach crops that were direct seeded. There's also quite a bit of weeds in there as well. Now on the red Russian, this is a crop that I had mixed success with in the past with overwintering, and the main reason that, or at least my hypothesis for the reason that it was never really that great, is I was planting it too late. My assumption was sort of the logic of, well, it's a cold hardy crop and it grows relatively fast. I should be able to plant this at the same time as I do spinach, being the first week of October in an unheated greenhouse or a poly low tunnel, and have a good result. Well, that wasn't the case, and I think the reason is when you have a cold germination and a thick crop like the red Russian, it doesn't overwinter well when it doesn't have a thick core. And so the reason that I've won with these ones is these were planted August 18th, so it's a summer planting date, and they were cut probably 3 or 4 times before they were left to overwinter. And the thing that I can see just from looking at them that's made them survive the cold winter, you know, we get down to -20 here at periods during the winter here, -20 Celsius, is they have a core. So if you look closely here, you can see how there's a thick core, and you can see there's different leaves that have been cut, and you can see where those are cut off. But because this has this thick, robust core, that survives the winter well. Whereas with a red Russian crop that was seeded early in the fall, it doesn't have time to establish that thick core, and it makes it less likely to survive the winter. It also means those leaves are more tender, and what's happened in previous years is that those leaves will rot on top of one another, and then anything that's a killed leaf that's rotting on the other one will just kill the whole plant. Whereas with this thick core, it seems a lot more resilient to it. Now, we've already cut these a number of times. I think these beds have already been cut twice in the last 3 or 4 weeks, and they're regenerating in like 7 to 10 days, which is incredible for early spring production. Because normally what's happening is, if I didn't have any of this overwintered crop production, I would be prepping these beds up, you know, maybe at the earliest for me, late February, especially with these winters in recent years, and then getting a crop direct seeded in them. And you can see there's 2 here. These 2 that I'm showing you are from our home-based plot. These were seeded a couple weeks ago, and they're just popping up. So if I didn't have this overwintered production, I would still be waiting on these crops to be ready. So this just gives me such a huge marketing advantage, because it means we've got a lot of production and a good amount of variety to add on top of our microgreens products that we have right out of the gate at the beginning of the season. Now you can see with this bed of red Russian, this was planted at the end of August 30th to be exact, and it was under a poly low tunnel, so doesn't do quite as well under the poly low tunnel. You get a bit of spotty germination. You know, in the low tunnels there's way more temperature fluctuations because there's a smaller volume of air, so when it heats up really quick, and when it cools down really quick. So I think that's why you don't see as good of germination here. However, the other factor to consider might be the slightly later planting date. This was planted 2 weeks later than the other crops, so that might be it there as well. More of it here. I'm at the plot that we're going to be losing in a month or so, and we've got some crops seeded here that are just coming up now. But you know, another bed of red Russian that survived, and we're getting multiple cuts on it, so it's certainly a winner in the overwintered category. Now back here at the home base, in the arugula crop, and these 5 25-foot beds of arugula have survived the winter quite well. The crop looks a little bit different than it does, or than it did in the summer. It's kind of curling over, but my guess is when we do a cut, because this is what happened last year, is we did a cut, and the second cut coming back looks almost like it did in the summer. Now, this arugula was direct seeded August 23rd of 2017, and you know, it's thick. It looks relatively good. A little bit weedy in here, and that's not surprising when you have a direct seeded crop that's been in the ground as long as this has. You're going to have some of those winter weeds and early spring and the late fall weeds that come on. And so you got some grass in there, got a bit of mallow, some residual crops from previous crops in the beds. But overall, it looks pretty good, and it's relatively thick. I imagine we'll get a half decent yield off this, as well as 1, hopefully 2 more cuts after that. So, you know, arugula, I can't say it's quite as strong as spinach or red Russian, but it's certainly good, and I think there is room for development here. One thing I want to try this coming fall is doing these with the paper pot. Getting these in the ground a little bit later with the paper pot and see if we get a different kind of result. But I'm certainly like super excited about what we've got so far. Now there's a couple Nothingburgers in the mix here. These 4 beds were Salanova with paper pot transplanter, planted about mid-September. They did not overwinter at all. So I would say for my climate, zone 6B, Salanova is not going to survive a winter in an unheated greenhouse. It certainly does in a heated greenhouse. I've done that before, but we tried to see if we could overwinter it. Didn't work, so we've turned those beds over a week ago and replanted arugula into them, and that arugula is coming along well. The other one that's kind of another Nothingburger was these are Hackeri. So they don't look great, and they're all going to flower. So I actually had my hopes up for this crop. I just got off the phone with a customer early this week saying, hey, yeah, I'm gonna have a ton of Hackeri Tokyo turnips in a couple weeks, but I don't think we're going to. Once they go to seed like this, they changes the taste, and in my opinion, they're not too palatable. And I'm sure if somebody was desperate for food, it would be edible, but not for the kinds of customers these are going for. So Salanova and the turnips didn't really overwinter that well there. So that has no doubt been the best overwintering season we've ever had on the farm. And the really interesting thing and kind of cool about it is that we didn't heat any of these greenhouses. You know, this tunnel in the past, we had run the heater in it to keep the crops going, and we didn't do that this year. Not that there was too many overwintered crops in here. We did have these 2 beds of spinach. We just cropped those out, cut them for the 3rd time, and then turned them over. But we didn't run any power on any of these crops this year. And so that's the thing that's super cool about it, is that we have over half of our farm, of the beds on our farm, are in production right now, this early in March. Like, that's insane. We've never done that before. So super groundbreaking. It's, for us at least, it's exciting to still find new things that we can do and different ways to push the boundaries this far in. You know, I'm in my 9th season of farming, and we're still finding things that surprise us, so that's exciting. Hope you guys found that helpful. If you want to see more stuff like that, hit the subscribe button, share and like the videos with your friends, and we'll talk to you guys later.